Hello, second graders. So last week we worked on making these abstract designs. I did cool colors and warm colors, but you might have done something else. And we filled our whole paper with color. And we have two papers now that are completely covered in color. And this week we're going to actually weave them. So the title of this lesson is called Wacky Weavings, and that's because today we are going to weave these pieces of paper together. But if you aren't at this stage yet, if you haven't filled your whole paper with color from edge to edge, corner to corner, pause this video, finish coloring, and then come back. Okay, so if you are continuing to watch this from here, it means both of your papers are colored. So when you weave something, you have two different parts. You have the warp and the weft. The warp goes up and down, are the strings or papers in this sense that go up and down. The weft are the ones that go left to right. So we're going to pick one of our papers to be the warp, and I'm going to pick my warm paper to be the warp because that just makes sense to me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half, sandwich style, or hamburger style, card style, however you think about it, with my design on the outside of the fold. So if I see my colors, I'm going to flip it over to the back so that my coloring is on the outside. Just like that. So you can see my colors are on the outside of my paper. And I have a fold. Notice on your fold that there is one side that's open and one side that's folded. I'm going to cut starting on the folded side. This is super important because if I cut it from this side, I'm going to mess it up and I'm going to have to start over. So I want to fold from this side of the paper. So I'm going to take some scissors and cutting starting at the folded side, I'm going to cut some strips into my paper. But it's very, very important that I don't cut all the way across. So I'm going to cut, and I'm going to stop with about an inch or so at the end of my paper. So I'm going to cut, stop. And I'm moving. I don't want them to be super, super skinny because I want them to be strong. So I'm going about an inch, half an inch. You can measure it if you want, or you can just kind of eyeball it. But I'm cutting strips all the way down my paper. You guys might remember doing something similar to this last year when we made our lanterns for the Lunar New Year. Cutting. Alright, so if I did it right, when I open it up, it should all still be one sheet of paper, but it has some slots in it, okay? So this is what it looks like if it's right. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to just gently kind of flatten that out, and I'm going to set it aside. And my cool paper is going to be my weft. So these are the pieces that I'm actually going to weave. So I'm actually going to cut this one completely apart. I want to cut it this way because that way the width of my paper is the same width as my weft. So I'm going to do it, I'm going to cut it so that my strips are the short length. You'll see what I mean by that in a second. And I'm going to just cut this into strips. So starting here, I'm going to just cut my paper just normal, just cutting strips of my paper. And I can even vary the how wide these are. That can make an interesting design. Or I can do them all the same width. That is up to me. I could even experiment with what it looks like if I cut them like zigzags or something. But I'm just going to keep this simple and cut them into strips that are pretty much the same width. This is why I told you not to draw anything that's like a picture, but to stick with abstract because we were just going to cut it up. Cutting. And I'm just going to cut this until I have cut the whole thing into strips. Okay, so I have my strips and I have my warp. So these are my weft, these are my warp. The key thing to remember with a basic weaving style is that I'm going over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. So what that means is that if I'm going to start with this, I'm going to start counting this as top, so I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And I'm not going to try to glue it or anything just yet. I'm just going to stick it in there, and I'm going to scooch it towards the top so it kind of locks into place there. And now for my second row, it's the same pattern but opposite. So on this one I started with over. Now I'm going to start with under. So going left to right, I'm going to go under, over, under, over. And this is going to be, you might have a little bit of trouble getting started at first, but once they all start locking into place, you'll get the hang of it. You'll start to get the feel for how to hold your paper, and it's going to all start to make sense. Go over, under, over, under, over. So now you can see, because this one is opposite, when I slide it up into place, it kind of locks into place and I start to get this checkerboard pattern. Alright, so I'm going to try it again. Now, because I started on under on this row, I need to go over. So I'm going to go over. So I'm just alternating the pattern each time. So I go over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. If you're having a hard time keeping your paper in place, something that you can do is you can just take a glue stick and do a little dot of glue on the edges of your paper, and that will help it hold in place. But I recommend trying to do it without the glue so that you can slide everything up and kind of twist and turn it until it's a way that you like. So you can see I'm starting to get this pattern, and it's really wacky. I've got this wacky weaving thing. It's super colorful because I used almost every color of the rainbow. Alright, so if I started on over here, I'm going to go under, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. I'm going to slide it up. Alright, so I'm going to keep going. I think you guys get the idea. If you started on under, you're going to go over, under, over, under. Next time you start with under. And you keep going back and forth. If it starts to look funky, like they're not squares, but they're more like long rectangles, it just means you're not alternating. So you just need to make sure that each row you're on the opposite pattern. So I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to finish it out, and then we'll talk about ways to complete our work and present it. Okay, so I've gone through and I've woven as many as I can fit in my slots. And it looks like this on the front and like this on the back. So on the back you can see this nice basket weave that we've created. And I haven't used any glue or anything, but it's all just kind of locked in place because of the weave. But if you wanted to take some glue and just put a little dot of glue under these flaps, you absolutely could do that. So you're done at this point. If you wanted to, you could glue this onto a piece of construction paper or something to give it a nice frame. You could punch some holes in the top of it and tie a string and hang it up that way. You could even experiment with turning this into something new. Like you could roll it. You could try doing some origami folding with it and see, but it would kind of come unraveled a little bit. But you can experiment with it however you would like. But that is our Wacky Weavings. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you would like to snap a picture of what you made and send it to me, that would be awesome. I would love to see it. I would love to see it, but you are not required to turn anything in. But if you want to share it with me, I would love to see it. So that is our project. Let me know if you have any questions, and have fun.